Let's talk about female ejaculation, aka squirting, because the great debate continues about whether the gush of fluid is actually urine or something very similar to the male explosion. But also, we're going to talk about it because it's something seen as rare and in some societies actually considered to be sacred. So, to be able to either have one or to be able to help your partner to have one, let's get to it. So, female ejaculation in textbook and so female ejaculation was first described as love juice in ancient Indian textbooks. And during the last 100 years, scientific focus has really been primarily focused on understanding what is it, the makeup of the fluid, which has been thought to either basically be urine, diluted urine, or prostate fluid. Yes, prostate fluid. And in this video, we're going to discuss what the fluid from women who squirt is typically made of. We'll also discuss the anatomy that makes squirting possible because, let's face it, not all women are able. And lastly, we'll discuss two surefire sexual techniques to precipitate geyser-like activity right down there. So let's get into it. So first, let's take a look at this study. Now, although it only follows 2 women, this study shines some great light on this much debated topic of to pee or not to pee. So they took 2 premenopausal women. They were both ages 44 and 45. And these were women who reported that they were able to explode and squirt during orgasms. So they took the samples of their urine before they had sex. And then they actually had to masturbate to get a second sample, which was female ejaculate or their squirting fluid. They looked at the fluid to compare it to the urine sample. And they also took that same fluid and compared it to male prostate fluid to see what exactly the fluid was most similar to. Was it most like urine? Was it a urine mix, or was it like prostate fluid? Now, for those of you who think that squirting is actually just urine, I think you're going to find this to be pretty amazing. So you see the W1 equals female ejaculate, and all the way to the right, you see male ejaculate. What you notice is, look at the level of PSA or prostatic fluid in female ejaculate, 213, 105, and in male ejaculate, it's between 110 upwards to 2000, right? So there's lots of PSA supporting the fact that this is prostate fluid. And if you notice, comparing the female ejaculate to the voided urine, there aren't a ton of similarities. But what it does appear, based off of this study, is that it's a mix between prostate fluid and some urine, but more similar to prostate fluid than it is to urine. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that when we were looking at these 2 ladies, the revelation there is that it is close to prostate fluid. Now, most scientific literature distinguishes female ejaculation and squirting as 2 distinct events with different contexts. Squirting is explained as consisting of a larger amount of water-like liquid, similar to urine, expelled from the urethra. Now, whereas female ejaculation is explained as being a smaller amount, only a few millimeters, like a thick, milky substance, very similar in consistency to male ejaculate, and is thought to originate from prostate glands in women. The prostate glands in ladies is actually referred to as paraurethral glands. These are glands that actually are surrounding the urethra. Now, you've heard of paraurethral glands probably before. Another name for them are Skene's ducts or glands, vestibular glands, paraurethral glands, periurethral glands, but they're all basically referencing this same structure right here. So if you look here, what you'll see is the clitoris up top. You'll see a urethral opening there. But what's not in this diagram that is missing from a lot is right next to the urethral opening on both sides, there's going to be a small little opening. And those two areas are considered the Skene's ducts, the periurethral glands, the vestibular glands, whatever you want to call it. This seems to be the opening area. And so there's a little bit of back and forth as to where this ejaculate or squirting fluid is actually coming from. Is it coming straight from the urethra, which is where urine comes out? Is it coming from the two glands to the sides of it? And a 2015 scientific article actually really concluded, after testing the squirting fluid from about 7 different women, they actually concluded that it was an involuntary explosion of urine during sexual activity. So this, back in 2015, this study was so popular that women's magazines around the world had headlines like "Squirting is just pee," say scientists. And it really threw things off with the squirting movement, because how can this glorious fluid just be pee? So let me show you part of a model. So let me show you a model of the reproductive tract that I put together. Now, this is a homemade model, and what you're looking at here is, this would be considered the vaginal opening, right? This would be considered the vaginal opening. Sitting on top, this would be considered the urethral opening. So if I put this model back up here for you, I want you to see urethral opening, vaginal opening, right? And then this up here is going to be considered the bladder. So what you're looking at in this model is surrounding the urethra. This colored part represents the paraurethral glands. Now, the paraurethral glands are a gland-like system that sits around the urethra, and as sexual stimulation occurs, these glands actually start to get full. And those two openings that I talked about that you can actually see when you're looking at the vulva of a woman are the outside communicating part of the ducts. So these ducts lie surrounding the urethra, and as stimulation is occurring inside and angling upwards, you're actually stimulating the paraurethral glands that are wrapped around the urethra. This is why if you angle upwards, you can actually feel kind of an urge to urinate, because there's pressure on the bladder, because the urethra is the communicating tube from the bladder. So just like the prostate encircles the male urethra, the paraurethral glands actually circulate and encircle the urethra in the lady. Now, the interesting thing about this is, as the clitoris swells and as these paraurethral glands swell, blood flow is coming to the area. This glandular system is becoming engorged with fluid. And as tension and pressure starts to mount, in some cases friction, orgasm occurs. And the elasticity of the glands moving rhythmically with the contraction of the walls of the vagina, the urethra, and the pelvic floor, this coordinated contraction actually helps propel fluid forward in a similar way that the prostate in the male helps propel fluid forward.